You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I am your host, Steph, and today I'm going to be previewing the 49ers offense and how they match up against the Saints defense. And I know what you might be thinking. You see the title of this podcast today. It's called Why the 49ers Can't Overlook the Saints. If you're seeing this on YouTube, the thumbnail says, is this a trap game? And you might be wondering, Steph, well, how could you say that? How could you say such a thing? Don't you have any faith in the 49ers? Of course, I do have faith in the 49ers, but I also am aware of the fact, doing some research on this game and like this matchup, I think there's reason why the 49ers just cannot overlook the Saints, and in particular, this defense, which we're going to be talking about today, how the 49ers offense matches up against them. So I'll give you my reasoning today, so don't panic. But yes, I still feel like there's a way the 49ers can win despite that. So I will also explain all of that. What's going on, Melissa? Thank you for joining today. Yes, thank you for the Thanksgiving greeting here. She says, Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you guys. I won't be going live tomorrow, obviously, for the holiday, but I will be back on Friday I'll be giving a preview of the 49ers defense and how they match up against the Saints offense. Okay. Anyway, today we're talking about the 49ers offense. So let's just get right into that. And let's see here. Oop. 1 second. I got to bring in my slides for some visual aid for what I'm talking about here. So give me 1 second. I'm just bringing it up here. Melissa says trap games are real, especially because we won 3 straight and Jimmy G hasn't been picked in a while. Yeah, so I mean, that's a good point. The 49ers are kind of rolling right now. So there's always that potential that they could get caught up in all of that and maybe forget about the opponent in front of them. I don't expect that to happen, but, you can never be too sure. So anyway, I put together some stats of the Saints here. 1 second. Oh, I wanted to go over. Forgot to put the injuries stuff here, but oh yeah, here it is. Sorry. Little discombobulated today. All right, so the Saints beat reporter here said that the Saints are getting some key players back at practice today. So this is something to keep an eye on. You see Bradley Roby, their corner, as well as Marshawn Lattimore. They've missed a few weeks now. They're practicing today. That is huge for the Saints and what they're able to do on defense. So I thought I'd call that out because that's important, as well as their defensive end, Marcus Davenport and Cameron Jordan. They are all practicing today. So something to keep an eye on throughout the week. Like I said, some of these players being back for the Saints is huge, especially on defense. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it throughout the week. Just because they're practicing or starting to practice doesn't mean they play, but there is that possibility. Could be a boost for the Saints. So keep that in mind throughout the week, but I'll keep you posted. All right, so I wanted to show you guys some of the stats that I've gathered on the Saints, just some rankings, right? They are 6th in sack percentage. And of course, the higher or the closest to 1 that the ranking number is, the better they are. So they are 6th. So that's pretty good in sack percentage. They get sacks 8.58% of the time. I would assume that's on dropbacks. And in their last 3 games, they are ranked 4th in sack percentage. So the offensive line didn't give up any sacks last week against the Cardinals, but there is not an opportunity, but there is a chance that we see the Saints get a sack or 2 against the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo this week. Based on this stat, something to keep an eye on. They're also 7th in opponent completion percentage. They're allowing just 61.29% of their of opponent passes to be completed. And they're an 8th in opponent passing yards per game, 195.2. That is their average passing yards allowed per game this season. So again, not very high. 8th is pretty good in comparison to, many other teams in the league. And they are also 12th in opponent yards per game. They're 12th in opponent first downs per game. And this is where it starts to go in the favor of the 49ers. So I mentioned just now all of the good rankings for them, which I think are noticeable. I mean, passing yards per game, yards allowed per game, first opponent first downs per game. I think those would all equate to the 49ers offense possibly having a tougher time on offense against this defense. But let me list these next ones here, which I think there's room for the 49ers to have some success. The Saints defense are ranked 23rd in yards per carry allowed. Hello. So they're 8th in opponent passing yards per game, but they're 23rd in yards per carry allowed. What does that tell you? Well, tells me that Jimmy Garoppolo may have a harder time passing the football in this game. But on the bright side, it sounds like the Saints defense are susceptible to the run a bit. They're allowing 4.6 yards per carry on average. So that's pretty good. And I will mention in their last 3 games alone, the Saints defense have allowed an average of 184.3 rushing yards per game. In that span, in the last 3 weeks, that is the worst in the NFL. 184.3 rushing yards allowed per game. So that is something that could play a role in this game. Maybe the 49ers aren't able to throw as much, but they might have a lot of success on the ground, which we know the 49ers are also comfortable winning that way. So that could be the difference between the type of game that we saw last week and the one that we see potentially against the Saints on Sunday. So something to keep at the back of your mind. Maybe a big Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell game this week. Also, the Saints are 31st in takeaways. So they're not generating a lot of turnovers. In fact, they only have 1 turnover in the last 5 weeks. That's not very good. And they're 32nd in the league, which is dead last in turnover differential, -12. So their offense is turning the ball over more than their defense is generating takeaways. So something also to consider in this game. They're also 25th in opponent points per game. They allow 24.3 on average points per game to their opponents. So again, something that could possibly favor the 49ers. But all in all, I feel like the Saints are pretty balanced all together as a team. And that could be something that makes this a potentially not tough game, but just one that is in a walk in the park. I mean, I think when I saw this game on the schedule, at least after the bye week, I'm like, that should be a win. That's a win right there. And I didn't even think twice about it. But now that I'm looking at all the stats, I'm like, this could be a close game. Like, so I just want to put that in your guys' mind too, so we're prepared for pretty much any outcome. And I like to educate you guys because I like to educate myself on some of these matchups and how things might go, just so I have some sort of expectation. But anyway, I expect based on the rankings I listed, it would be a little harder for the 49ers offense to pass the ball, but they might have more success running the football. Let's look at the offensive line and defensive line matchup here. So we're looking at the 49ers offensive line against the Saints defensive line. So you see here, the Saints are pretty good on the edge. Carl Granson, he's pretty solid. He did stat pad against the Rams last week, but I mean, it's the Rams, so who doesn't? I mean, I feel like the Rams are that one team that everyone is just kind of having their way with this season. It's kind of crazy. But Granson last week against the Rams had 4 pressures, 2 hurries, and 2 sacks. Peyton Turner, their first round edge from the 2021 draft, he's dealing with an injury this week. He wasn't seen practicing today, so and that's today, it's Wednesday, so there is some time for him to get back on the practice field and potentially play. But again, something to keep an eye on. Peyton Turner, a question mark so far for this game, and that could have an impact on the defensive line and how effective they may be. But as I mentioned, some of the names that you're not seeing here are, some of the guys that could potentially play in this game, just based on some guys that we mentioned are back at practice. Marcus Davenport, Cameron Jordan. So we'll keep an eye on that throughout the week, because that would be a huge boost to this Saints defensive line. But the good news is we just finished seeing the 49ers offensive line having the game of their lives pretty much against the Cardinals. They were amazing in that game. We want to see more of that. Last week against the Cardinals, the 49ers offensive line allowed 4 quarterback hits, 3 hurries, 7 total pressures, and best of all, 0 sacks last week against the Cardinals. And that is huge. If they can keep that momentum going, it kind of seems like they're starting to hit a stride, right? And, last week's game against the Cardinals, not only did they pass block well, but I saw some badass run blocking too. And so that, makes me feel good about the matchup. Not to say that the Saints, again, their defensive line is going to be a walk in the park, but 49ers offensive line is not the Rams offensive line. And just because we saw the Saints defensive line demolish the Rams last week and their offensive line last week does not mean that that's going to carry over to this week, but vice versa for the 49ers. So yes, the 49ers may give up a few more pressures this week against the Saints, but can't be worse than the Rams offensive line. So there's always that. Melissa asks, Steph, you seen Sean Kugler fired because of the 49ers win in Mexico? He was not fired because of the 49ers. He was fired because he groped a woman. So not cool. But yeah, it wasn't because of the 49ers, although that's funny to think. But yeah, it's just because he's trash. He's a trash human being. So that's good they fired him, I guess, for that. What's going on, Tanya? Thank you for joining. And make sure you guys like this video if you have not yet. Appreciate it. All right. So because of what I mentioned with the 49ers potentially having more success on the ground this week, I had to, look up Christian McCaffrey and how he did against the Saints as a member of the Panthers, because the Panthers are a division opponent to the Saints. Usually, divisional opponents play each other a lot tougher than other teams, because they're so familiar with each other. So I wanted to see how Christian McCaffrey did in his career against the Saints. And here's what I found. So in 8 games that he played against the Saints, he averaged 46.6 rushing yards per game. He was also averaging 3.4 yards per carry. And of course, we know Christian McCaffrey is more than just a rusher. So he also had 54.5 receiving yards per game on average in those 8 games. And he had 5 total touchdowns against the Saints in those 8 games. So not the greatest numbers, okay? I know. And you can do what you want with this information. I'm not saying that this means McCaffrey is going to get shut down this week either. I'm simply presenting the information. It could be completely different. We have to consider the fact as well that the Panthers are an entirely different team. Christian McCaffrey was pretty much their entire offense for much of the time he was there. And now he's on a team with the 49ers that have a lot of other weapons. So you can't always just focus on Christian McCaffrey because the other playmakers are going to make you pay. So I just wanted to present this information, I guess, to make you guys aware, if you weren't already, and just have it in the back of your mind. Don't be completely surprised if he does get shut down on Sunday. That's all I wanted to point out there. But if that were to happen, if the Saints choose to focus on Christian McCaffrey, I think the 49ers are going to be okay because we've seen Elijah Mitchell, how good he's looked in his first few games back from IR. He's been looking very efficient. He has 5.7 yards per carry this season. And so if he has to take an extended role to help this team win on Sunday, I feel good about it. And I think the 49ers and he would have success if, things go south with McCaffrey and Mitchell has to take on a larger role. So I'd be comfortable with it. Also have to consider the fact, again, the 49ers are not the Panthers and they have way more playmakers on this team. For example, George Kittle, although I will also give another slide of caution here for George Kittle because, yes, we just finished seeing him have a great game against the Cardinals. The Cardinals, by the way, one of the worst teams against tight ends, but the Saints are one of the toughest teams against tight ends this season. They're allowing an average of just 33.45 yards per game to tight ends and have only allowed one touchdown this season to tight ends. They've played 10 weeks, okay? It's been 10 weeks. I don't know. Actually, 9? Have they had the bye week? I don't know. I don't remember. But that's a large sample size, and to only have allowed one touchdown to a tight end is pretty crazy. That one touchdown was to Mark Andrews, one of the top 3 tight ends in the league. That happened in week 9. So, again, not so much to say that George Kittle may not score because Mark Andrews has done it. And I would put George Kittle in the conversation of one of the top tight ends in the league, right? Up there with Kelsey and Andrews. But I'm just putting it out there that maybe we see George Kittle kind of, go back into the shadows a little bit on this offense this week just because the Saints are so tough against tight ends. So, again, just wanted to point that out. But the good thing is, we have other weapons besides George Kittle, so we have wide receivers who Kyle Shanahan uses pretty well. Brandon Ayuk, what I'm seeing from Brandon Ayuk is he's hitting the stride lately. He's been very consistent for this team, very reliable. And I think he can beat anybody. He can beat any cornerback. The key is Jimmy Garoppolo finding him on those plays where he cooks his man because he's been cooking some dudes out there. But Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't always see it. I don't blame him. Sometimes you got to get the ball out quick before Brandon Ayuk finishes his route anyway. But Brandon Ayuk can beat anybody, and especially in the red zone, he's been especially lethal as of late. And so I think there's an opportunity for Brandon Ayuk, these 49ers wide receivers, to find some success against the Saints defense, despite, some of the rankings that we saw earlier of the Saints having a bit more success against, the passing game. I still feel like Brandon Ayuk can get open. He can, be effective enough to help the 49ers move the ball and be successful. And then we have Debo, who I think, again, if Christian McCaffrey were to possibly be keyed in on by the Saints defense, I think Debo can be a beneficiary of that. And I feel like we saw that even last week against the Cardinals on his touchdown end around play. I thought that was a great play design by Kyle Shanahan, but it also just goes to show like the defense was going the opposite direction because one, it looked like the play was going in that direction, but also because the running back was going in that direction. So they kind of keyed in on that. Deebo Samuel, of course, going the opposite way with blockers in front of him. It's just a great, smart way to use Deebo Samuel, and I think we can continue to see that type of usage for him in this game. And that's something that not a lot of teams can stop. And I know before the 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey, uh, there was a lot of defenses really keen in on Deebo Samuel, and it was kind of predictable whenever Deebo was in the backfield. Defenses would kind of know that he was going to get the ball. But now with Christian McCaffrey, you just don't know anymore who's going to get the ball between either one of those guys, or it could be a pass to someone else. You just never know. So I think it opens things up for Deebo in that regard, and his wide back role, I think, is still effective because of Christian McCaffrey. So I think we see a little bit more of that in this game as well. Juwan Jennings, he was a little quiet last week, somewhat disappointing. I think he was thrown the ball a couple times, but one of them was the one he slipped, and the other one was the attempt in the end zone that he kind of missed. I don't know if he missed it or if it was slightly overthrown. I feel like he could have caught it, but anyway, he was quiet last week. Okay, Juwan Jennings, maybe potentially he has a not big game. I don't think there's any big Juwan Jennings games unless there's like bunch of third down conversions, which there could be. But I think, we might see some more involvement with Juwan Jennings this week, especially because, like I mentioned, George Kittle may be locked up a little bit, from the linebackers. So, yeah, we could see a little more Juwan Jennings if you guys are into that kind of thing. And let me get some comments here. Let's see. Tanya says Saints offense is 9th in run blocking. Very interesting stat. Very good. I'm going to make note of that because I haven't done my offense preview for the Saints offense. I haven't looked into them quite yet. So I'll make sure to talk about that tomorrow when I talk about not tomorrow, Friday, when I talk about the 49ers defense matchup against the Saints offense. We'll preview that. And Tanya also says we got to make sure we don't let Taysom Hill run wild. Yeah, I would expect them to try to use Taysom Hill a little bit more this week. He's been quiet the last few weeks, but I feel like they might realize, hey, we have this really, talented, dangerous guy on our team. Why aren't we using him enough? That could happen against the 49ers. I feel like the 49ers will be ready for that, though, and they kind of have been historically, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. CG Ruthless, what's going on, man? You guys subscribe to his channel if you have not yet. Great 49ers content as well. He says, we got to stop Kamara mostly. Yeah, Kamara, you always got to stop. But I think, again, the 49ers defense has been able to do that this season. They've been great at stopping the run. So I think they're going to have a fine plan for stopping Kamara, stopping Taysom Hill. But I'll do some more research on the Saints offense for Friday's episode. But we're going to continue talking about the 49ers offense going up against the Saints defense. And finally, let's get to Jimmy Garoppolo. Because for all of the reasons that I mentioned earlier, and I'll bring up the slide one more time for the video viewers here. But for some of these rankings that you see in regards to the Saints defense defending the pass, I think this will be a game where, Jimmy Garoppolo won't be throwing quite as much as we saw last week. And that's okay because he may not even need to throw that much, because if he is efficient, as he has been lately, he's been really good. He's been very accurate on third downs. He's been very sharp. If he can do all those things, there is no reason that this offense can't have success in this game because, they have way too much talent. If the Saints defense wants to key in on a specific guy, whether that be McCaffrey, whether that be George Kittle. There's other playmakers on this team who can make plays and are just as dangerous with the ball in their hands. So I'm on that. I'm on the idea that the 49ers offense doesn't have any excuses to underperform. And so these last few games to me have pretty much just been a validating kind of, stretch, because it's like, finally, we're seeing what this offense can do. So that being said, even if Jimmy Garoppolo can't throw the football, if he throws it just a few times, as long as he's efficient in those times that he does throw it, the 49ers can win this game because, again, there's other playmakers. If Christian McCaffrey is going to get keyed in on, we have Elijah Mitchell, who has proven to be effective with the ball in his hands as well. And so there's just too much talent on this offense to not figure out a way to win and to not be able to score points. So that's why I feel pretty good all around. Like, yes, it may not be as dominant as it was last week. And that's pretty much all I was saying with the fact that the 49ers can't overlook this defense. I think it'll be tougher sledding for them. And I still think it'll be a closer game than, I might have originally expected. I think it'll be a low scoring, close game. But I think the 49ers can still win. So one of the big questions this week has been, or in the last couple of days, should the 49ers re-sign Jimmy Garoppolo this offseason? And I'm curious to know what you guys in the comments think. Should the 49ers look to re-sign Jimmy Garoppolo this offseason? He's on a 1-year deal with the team. There's pretty much no chance of a trade, right? He's the QB1 right now. Of course, if Trey Lance had stayed healthy, there was always the option they could have traded Jimmy Garoppolo in the season, but that ship has sailed. Jimmy Garoppolo is here to stay to the rest of the season. So really, the 49ers don't really have a lot of leverage over Jimmy Garoppolo and what happens in the offseason. It's really more so a matter of, do the 49ers want him back? Does Jimmy Garoppolo, would he want to come back to the 49ers? And that's one of the questions we don't know. Do I think the 49ers would want Jimmy Garoppolo back? With the way that he's playing, it wouldn't at all surprise me. However, there are some hurdles to that, right? Like, it's not as simple as, well, he's playing well, so they're going to re-sign him. The 49ers have allocated a lot of cap space to a lot of players. Nick Bosa is the next man up to get a new deal, so they have to protect those investments that they've made, and they have to think long term about, their financial future and their cap space. So basically, if they were to extend Jimmy Garoppolo, it would be a multi-year deal. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is doing another 1-year deal. He wants to have another multi-year deal. How long that deal is, I don't know. I would think maybe a few years, but I don't think the 49ers are really in a position to offer Jimmy Garoppolo, that much money and that much time on a deal, because Jimmy Garoppolo, the way he's playing right now and the way other quarterbacks on other teams are playing right now, Zach Wilson just got benched. Davis Mills just got benched. So there's a lot of QB needy teams that are going to be looking for a quarterback this offseason. And Jimmy Garoppolo so far looks like one of those players that should be at the top of those people's lists or those teams' lists for, how they would replace or get a new quarterback. And so in that sense, the 49ers can't really, or won't really, I don't think, get into a bidding war for Jimmy Garoppolo. But again, it'll really come down to if Jimmy Garoppolo wants to be back, and does that outweigh him wanting to, get more money from another team. He knows he has a lot of success here. He knows that Kyle Shanahan, brings out some strengths in him. I was talking with Ryan Hensley on his channel not too long ago about the fact that Brian Greasy, the new quarterback coach, Like we think that he's been great for Jimmy Garoppolo this season. And so, yes, he's in a good situation here. He likes all the playmakers, all his coworkers essentially, and so if that weighs heavily and he values that personally, then yeah, I'm sure they can make something work. But I don't know. I still think it's too early to say because it really depends on how the rest of this season goes for Jimmy Garoppolo and this team. If the 49ers were to win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback, I mean, I think you kind of have to make some decisions there. I would totally understand that. But if that doesn't happen, then I think the 49ers and even Jimmy Garoppolo would be okay with saying, yeah, like this didn't really work out how we thought it would. I'm going to go and check out some other teams. So I don't know. I still think it's too early to say. I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers have thought in their mind, hey, maybe we should bring this guy back with the way he's playing. But again, it all like Jimmy Garoppolo has more power in the situation this offseason than he has in years. So I think he's going to use that power as he should. And I think he should get the money that's out there. We always talk about how players should get the money that's available to them when it's available, because in football you never know how long your career is going to be. And yes, he's had a lot of success. He's had good deals. um the deal that he was with the 49ers before was a great massive deal. But maybe he wants more, and I wouldn't fault him for that. So it's really up to what the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo want to do and how this season finishes up. But yeah, let me see what you guys think in the comments. I'm sure this is gonna be interesting. What's going on, Niner gang? Melissa says, hell no, more 10. She wants nothing to do with Jimmy Garoppolo anymore. Um, Niner Gang says, not likely, but if you can, do it. In a perfect world, we can have both quarterbacks, but Jimmy G is probably elsewhere next year. Yeah, I agree with this. In a perfect world, you would have both quarterbacks. And I think with the fact that, Trey Lance coming off that broken ankle, he didn't play again this season. The 49ers need a solid quarterback to go with Trey Lance. But the plan would, of course, be if Jimmy Garoppolo would come back, it would be for him to be QB1, and he'd have to have that security to know, hey, you guys aren't gonna start Trey Lance, right? Like, I'm the unquestioned QB1. I think that's the only biggest condition that Jimmy Garoppolo would have for him to come back. Again, it's all up to him. He has all the power and leverage in the situation, I think, which is different from what we've seen in the past. So, I think he should use that power. Yeah, Niner Gang says too many teams need quarterbacks right now. The Jets are one of them. Look, the Jets are a good team, and the makeup of their team is very similar to the 49ers in the sense that they're a defense first kind of team. They have a playoff defense right now. That's the fact. That's why are they 5-2, right? 5-2 or 5-3 right now. Yeah, it's because of their defense. It's not because of Zach Wilson. Okay, maybe a little of Joe Flacco in the beginning of the season, but yeah, the Jets are a good team. They have one of the little floors over there, right? The offensive coordinators. So, they have some familiar pieces for Jimmy Garoppolo that I think would be, desirable for him should he want a change of scenery. I think the Jets would be a great choice for him. CG says Jimmy will cost too much. His value will skyrocket. I agree. I think it already has, assuming things continue to go like they have, which again, like I said, it's too early to say. Like, what if he has another injury towards the end of the season? That brings his value down. What if he starts to regress a little bit? That brings his value down. So that is all very fluid. That can change the rest of this season. We just don't know. But if things continue the way that they're going right now, yeah, absolutely. I think Jimmy will cost too much, and it'll be a matter of Jimmy taking a smaller deal or less money with the 49ers than going with another team and getting another deal. Does he want to do that? I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't if I were him, but I don't know. Melissa says we have 30 plus on 1 year deal. Stop wasting cap on Jimmy G. It's time to rip off the band-aid and move on. Yeah, I mean, I could see it either way, like either way, I think I'd understand. Because yeah, the 49ers can't continue putting money into Jimmy Garoppolo. They have to take advantage of the fact that they have a quarterback on a rookie deal in Trey Lance, and they can spend that money elsewhere. Nick Bosa extension, for example, some other guys who you may want to extend, things like that. So I think there's a lot of nuance to it that is more complicated than just yes or no in this situation. CG says, what can be difficult if he wins a Super Bowl? He can cash in a huge payday elsewhere. Which is funny because if he did win the Super Bowl with the 49ers, I think the 49ers would be all over wanting to resign him to another deal. So that's the crazy part. It's, yes, he would demand more money elsewhere. But also, would the 49ers be willing to pay that money just because he got him to a Super Bowl? Would they want to be like, yeah, let's run it back? I don't know. It's weird situation. Tanya says, yes, Steph, Greasy has helped Jimmy G improve. Yeah, I think he definitely has. But she says, no way he's not coming back. I don't think so either. But, people have said, well, maybe he values the teammates more. He already had a big deal. He's already made a lot of money. He doesn't need to play for money anymore. Bullshit. If I were him, I'd be going after the money. I'd be chasing the money, but that's just me. CG says, could it change? A Super Bowl win can change the possibility of Jimmy returning. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it can. And so it's one thing, we can start discussing this because Jimmy has been playing so well lately, but it is a fluid conversation, right? This can change week to week. Next week, if Jimmy looks terrible on Sunday, I might be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm done with this experiment. But again, yeah, it's all about how this season finishes for Jimmy Garoppolo in the offense as a whole. It'll be interesting though, because I think it's going to be a discussion, until the 49ers season ends. And even after that, I think it's going to be a discussion. So the Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance debates are not over, I don't think, unfortunately. But anyway, let's just end it right here. The 49ers, like I said, to recap everything I talked about, if you guys missed the episode, I think that the Saints defense are tougher on they're tougher on the passing game, but there is some vulnerability there on the ground. And I do think that the 49ers will have more success on the ground this week than they did last week. I think the type of game from last week, it's gonna kind of flip. So just be prepared for that. But that's good because I think it'll prove that this 49ers team can win in a variety of ways. They can pass the football, they can win running the football as well. Some weeks they're going to do it with George Kittle being a huge part of it. Some weeks they'll do it with Debo being a huge part of it, and vice versa. Like that, there's so many playmakers. They have no excuses but to be successful and find ways to win. So all in all, I think the 49ers offense will find a way to win in this game. But yeah, it's going to be tougher than we think. I think the defense, the Saints defense, is going to prove to be kind of tough. It's going to be a low scoring game, I think, but I still think the 49ers could win. So, all right, guys, that's all for me today. What's going on, Ty? You joined late. You're going to have to rewind this video, but if you guys have not yet, make sure that you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. We're so close to hitting monetization on this channel, and it's all because of you guys and all the support that you show. So I really appreciate it. Any share, any like goes a long way. So thank you so much. And have a good Thanksgiving, guys. And I'm thankful for you guys for all the love that you give me and for giving me, this platform and this space to, share my passion for the 49ers. So thankful for you guys and thankful for football. Enjoy, the Thanksgiving meal. Enjoy football in your families. And I'll be back on Friday for the 49ers defense preview episode. Have a good rest of your afternoon. Peace.